ladies, I'm really excited that Dr. Eleanor Stein, Ellie, is with us here today, and she is. I don't even want to use the word retired because it's not retired psychiatrist.
Not
So
so
you're not really
retired.
retired,
Yeah.
not so retired, and is now, has been devoting her time to not only travel, so speaking to us from the road, but to helping people with chronic fatigue, with chronic pain, fibromyalgia, long COVID. And what I have found, I've had Ellie come to on the pain clinic a couple of times. And in my experience of like just interviewing people for almost 5 years now, I find that your information is very digestible and relevant and also like super current, like really up to date. And so I thought you were the perfect person to come and join us here to, as part of this, when we're talking about nervous system healing, restoring ourselves, moving again, sleep is always something that comes up
Absolutely.
and all the time. So why don't we, yeah, so we're in week 4 of a 5-week program that will eventually be longer, and it's Lioness Rising. So finding that part of us again that maybe we've done the healing, we've done a lot of reading, a lot of relaxing, restoring, and want to move and find parts of us again, like find our purpose in authenticity. I think you know what I'm talking about.
hmm Sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, just the title
Yeah.
Lioness Rising, I'm like, yes, right? Right, like for ourselves to rise again and be powerful and strong and healthy.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we've got an hour here, and yeah, so we'll have a time at the end for questions, and in the
Okay.
meantime pop things in the chat, or if there's something that's, just sticking for anybody, just hit the raise hand button, and I am recording, yes, double check.
Okay.
And and we'll pause and ask a question. So, yeah. Ellie, take us through
Okay.
get sleeping like a lioness.
Okay. And I've been to Africa and I have seen lionesses and they really sleep. So when they're chasing a prey, of course, they're like, they're all on, right? Fight, flight, fight. And then afterwards, they are just like, I mean, their eyes are closed. Maybe their tail is swishing a fly, but they are
Yeah.
very relaxed. So I thought
We need some of that.
I'm gonna, so somehow I got out of my awesome full screen here. We can do it. There we go. Um, so this is all about how to get restorative sleep. And I thought I would start with a little personal story. So I've had horrible sleep my entire life. I have some ideas about why that may be the case. Nevertheless, it's improving recently because I'm learning a lot and trying new things that are helping. And it's kind of like the layers of an onion that as I'm getting better sleeps many nights, it's more obvious when something's interfering. Before it was just horrible all the time. I couldn't tell what was causing what. And I'm the most surprised person in the world to notice that small stressors, like things that are niggling at me or I'm thinking about, affect my sleep. I never knew they did because I couldn't see it for all the noise. So this topic is very, very relevant. And I'm almost like more sensitive now to the little things that are impacting my sleep. And that's making me more motivated to do things before bed that are calming, right? To get my nervous system calm and regulated. So
Mhm.
just to say, I've been there, I get it. Sleep is a massive challenge. And when you get a good one, it is sweet. So this is what I'm proposing to cover, why we don't get enough sleep. Now, you might go, that's pretty obvious, but nevertheless, I want to kind of re-emphasize because it's stuff we have within our control. Briefly, the health consequences of insufficient sleep. This always makes me cranky because, of course, I'm trying to do everything I can to get good sleep. And then when people tell me all the ways I'm going to die because my sleep isn't good enough, it's like, "Arr."
This
The
makes you more
importance,
anxious.
yeah, exactly. Well, and kind of angry because it's like, don't tell me that. So I'm going to skip over that a little bit more quickly. The importance of the sun. This is a little bit of newer information that I'm learning, which is really turning everything I've done for the last 40 years on its head. The core principles of how, like the behavioral principles of how to optimize sleep and wake refreshed. And then a new section that Madeline hasn't seen is some frequently asked questions. And depending how we're doing for time, I may ask you to just choose the ones that you're most interested in instead of going through them all, because there's probably like 8 or 9 of them. So one of the really leading public figures in sleep is Matthew Walker. He's written a very fascinating book called Why We Sleep, which is very accessible. It's a bit heavy, but it's definitely accessible if you like science. And he basically says sleep is the greatest support system you could ever wish for. It's a health insurance policy. It's largely democratic, meaning anyone can do it. It's free, which is brilliant, right? You don't have to buy any expensive equipment or supplements or medications, and it's painless. So I'm going to quickly remind people what sleep should look should. Okay, we're all different, so I just made my first mistake of the presentation. What sleep could look like. Generally speaking, it's recommended that adults get 8 hours of sleep, 7 to 9. Now, since I've become an adult, an older adult, I don't get that much, and I don't know that I feel I need that much, but anyway, that's what's in all the textbooks. And sleep is in 90-minute blocks, more or less, where we cycle from awake, which is up here, down to deep sleep, which is stage 4, up into REM, which is dreaming sleep, and then we go through it all again. And as the night progresses, so at the beginning of the night, we get most of our deep sleep. That's important because a lot of very important restorative processes in the brain and the body occur only during deep sleep. So those first, say, 3 to 4 hours are quite important. And then as we progress towards morning, you'll notice that the REM portions get bigger, and REM is also very important, and it helps us consolidate certain types of memory. So you can't really say deep sleep is more important or REM is more important. Every aspect of sleep is important. And it's really the balance. Now, it is true, I'm sure many of you have noted this, that as we age, we get less sleep. And I'm right in this declining part right here. And I think we don't know yet, do we get less sleep and it's a problem? Like it would be ideal if we could get more, but something's changing in our brain to prevent it? Or is it that we just don't need as much sleep? I haven't seen any research on that. But just to let you know, as you get, say, over 50, the number of hours does start declining. So don't panic. Now, many of you may have sleep trackers, and this is what you're looking for. The key numbers are the total sleep time, which again, in a younger person should be 7 to 9 hours. The sleep efficiency, which is of the total time that you're in bed, how many of those hours are you sleeping? And towards the end of the presentation, you're going to see why this is important. You want this number to be above 85%. So basically, you don't want to be lying in bed, tossing and turning awake. That's extremely problematic from a behavioral point of view. And then you want about 25% of your total sleep time. The trackers give you all these numbers to be deep sleep, and you want 25% to be REM sleep. Now, these are very, very ideal. And I have to be honest, I do not achieve them almost ever. I want to say something really quickly about what's happening in the body that makes us sleep because it gives a little bit of insight. So we need three things to happen, these three bullet points. We need a molecule in our body called adenosine to increase. Adenosine is a molecule which naturally accumulates in our body the longer we're awake. So when we first wake up in the morning, our adenosine levels are, I don't know if they're zero, but they're very, very low. As we go through the day, it goes higher and higher and higher. And the longer we stay up without sleep or napping, keeps going up. Eventually, the level of adenosine is so high that we become sleepy and we can't help but fall asleep. So this is in an ideal world. We naturally become sleepy. It's due to adenosine and we fall asleep. Coffee, caffeine, is an adenosine blocker. So coffee doesn't change the level of adenosine in the body, but it blocks its action. And that's why you get a little bit of an artificial alertness that lasts for a few hours before the coffee wears off. And the adenosine is hopefully still there so that you can then fall asleep. The second really important kind of biology is cortisol, which I'm sure you guys have been talking about in your course. And cortisol is the stress hormone. So whereas we want adenosine to be high, we actually want cortisol to be low. If you look at the 24-hour cycle of cortisol, it should be highest first thing in the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m., right before sunrise. There's a surge of cortisol to get us up and out of bed. And then it slowly decreases as the day goes on. And by evening, it should be at its lowest point. The third molecule we need is melatonin. I've just learned a ton of new stuff about melatonin, but to keep it simple, how do we get melatonin in our body? So melatonin helps us fall asleep. I thought the last time I gave this talk that melatonin was made in the brain at night. So as soon as the sun goes down and the blue light stops, that's when melatonin is made. And if you look at blue light, as I'm going to talk about in a future slide, it shuts it off. And now without melatonin, you're not going to be able to sleep. All of that is true. But what I've learned in addition, which is incredibly helpful, is that melatonin is made by the mitochondria in every cell of the body all day, only when we expose ourselves to sunlight, not indoor light. I won't go into it. It's like totally different animal. So the more you get outside in the day, the higher melatonin levels are building up in your body and the better you're going to sleep. So why is our sleep so bad? In 70 years, there's been research. We've lost 20 to 25% of our sleep. That's like 1.5 hours. That's massive change, right? We evolved as animals to need a certain amount of sleep and to get it. And since the advent of the electric light bulb, everything has changed. In addition, sleep has become stigmatized. Famous people who shall remain nameless say things in public like, I don't sleep, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I only need 4 hours sleep a night, like it's a badge of honor. What it is a badge of dementia, because as you're going to see, one of the things that happens when we're chronically sleep deprived is our brain doesn't work as well. People brag about getting by on less, and our bodies have a lot of capacity to adapt, but this is too big of a change to adapt to in 70 years, like basically 3 generations. Now, what happens? There's a whole big long list. I'll just go over what I think are the 5 most important aspects of not getting enough quality sleep. Memory is consolidated during sleep, and not getting enough sleep uh, increases the risk of Alzheimer's disease. I'll take out the double negative there by 50%. That's really, really significant. So sleep is important. Insufficient sleep leads to obesity. We shift from burning fat to burning carbohydrates. That means we just store fat and can't get rid of it. People who get less sleep lose less fat when dieting. And when I can certainly relate to this, when I'm tired, I eat more and I make poorer food choices. Diabetes goes up probably because of those bad food choices. The pancreas is less responsive to sugar spikes when we're sleep deprived, so it just doesn't, like our body just doesn't work as well. We have less glucose being moved from the blood into the muscle, so that leads to insulin resistance. And they did an experiment. They don't let researchers do this anymore because the impact of sleep deprivation is so well known and proven that they feel it's unethical to purposely deprive people of sleep and then measure all the ways in which they suffer. Shift work is a possible carcinogen for the top 4 types of cancer, and it also increases the risk of cancer growth and spread and recurrence. And probably it's because when we don't get enough sleep, our immune system doesn't do such a good job of repairing mutations to our DNA, and so therefore they go on and keep multiplying. It takes immune function to find and kill cancer cells. That's our natural killer cells. And the last one, no big surprise, sleep deprivation leads to accidents because people are just momentarily not paying attention. There's actually something called micro sleeps. So when you're sleep deprived and you're driving, you you are maybe unaware of it, but you have these momentary lapses where your brain actually goes into sleep. And I was shocked by this. Sleep deprivation causes more deaths than drugs and alcohol combined. In addition, you have decreased performance at work, decreased performance at school, and then the increased death due to the microsleeps. So that's all. I'll move on, but it's a problem. It affects our health in many measurable, proven ways. So the bad news is it's not possible to make up sleep debt. So I was sad to see this. I got a pretty big debt going on from years of struggling with sleep. But the good news is it's never too late to start. And as I'm going through the rest of the presentation, I would encourage you to say to yourself, which of these many strategies that I'm going to mention could I try? Right? You can't try everything at once. You know yourself the best, and think about, oh, maybe that would help me for your body type, your personality, your lifestyle, etc. So the 4 pillars of good sleep that I'm going to talk about are circadian, meaning it's synced to the sun; continuous, meaning you don't wake up a gazillion times during your sleep; sufficient, meaning it's that I'm almost you know, smiling as I say it, 7 to 9 hours. That still seems a bit ideal to me. And good quality, meaning you're getting that REM and deep sleep. So I have recently been really learning a lot about the importance of circadian rhythm. That means the natural 24-hour cycle that all beings, whether they be plants or animals, are regulated by. You all know that plants turn to look at the sun, right? Many of them open their flowers in the day, close their flowers at night, things like that. Virtually every organism, even single-celled like bacteria, orient themselves to the sun to try to get more of it. We evolved to be in sync with the sun. That means being up when the sun's up and being asleep when the sun is down. Light is the master controller of many, many things in our body. So the sunlight comes in through our eyes. To take advantage of this, you have to have your eyes open. You have to be outside to see the sun, and you can't be wearing sunglasses. Okay, I'm just like thinking ahead to some of the questions you might have. The rays from the sun hit the back of the eye. They're called melanopsin receptors, and that sends a signal to a place in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That is our internal body clock, and that sends signals to the whole rest of the body, saying it's time to get up, it's time to expect food, it's time to expect activity. Kidneys, it's time to excrete things like the kidneys down-regulate at night so that you're not constantly getting up to pee, things like that. You would be surprised to learn that every body system, every organ, every cell, and even every gene in every cell has its own individual biological clock. If we don't sync our eyes to the sun in the morning, these clocks are all ticking to their own drummer, their own speed, and everything is out of sync and the body cannot work as well. And I just can't emphasize this as enough, because when I first read this, I'm like, yeah, whatever, because I never got up in time to see the sunrise because I was too tired, right? But since I have really understood how important this is for health, I have changed my lifestyle. And on my travels over the last 5 months, not in midsummer when the sun got up at 3 o'clock, but now that the sun is rising at about 6:30, I'm up and I've got my eyes open and I've got my glasses off and I'm outside my van. Now, why do you need to be outside? Again, whole other lecture on the importance of sunlight, but you can see these numbers. The brightest indoor space gives a brightness in lux of 200 to 1,000 lux. The sun gives 100,000. Like, we're talking no comparison between the amount of information that your brain is going to receive from the sun, even if it's cloudy. You can see that even in the shade, you're still getting more information coming into your brain and body from being outside in the sun than the brightest indoor spaces. We need sunlight. Oh, these don't look like they're in the right order. Okay, so the frequency makeup, so why sunlight? You could say, well, what about a sad light? I get that asked that all the time. A seasonal affective disorder light. It's very bright light. It's 10,000 lux. It's regulated to be that bright. And you shine it in your eyes first thing in the morning, and it's very helpful for seasonal depression. The problem is it's totally different than the sun. The sun has every color in the spectrum. And in addition, it has invisible light. It has infrared, which you can't see, which is long wavelengths, and it has ultraviolet, which you can't see, which is very short wavelengths. Every single one of those frequencies is important for our health. Again, there's so much more I could say, but for the purpose of sleep, you just need to know that the most useful thing you can do to sleep better at night is to expose yourself to sunlight for 15 minutes minimum as soon after sunrise as possible. If you work inside, you're not getting any sunlight, visible or invisible. Helpful to get outside as often as possible, even if it's for your, 15-minute coffee break, and ideally on your lunch break, because that's midday and that's where you're going to get the incredibly valuable ultraviolet light. And then you want to go outside again around sunset, because that, as the light colors are changing and getting more red, that tells your brain that it's time for bed. Now, not only do we have to expose ourselves to these life-giving broad spectrum frequencies from the sun, but we also want to protect ourselves from man-made single single wavelength frequencies. So blue light gives our brain the message that it's daytime. I'm in blue light right now because I've got all of my LEDs in my van on because it's totally dark outside because I'm on the East Coast. And unfortunately, this is not good. So if I was being very following my own advice, I would have my blue blocking glasses on. I don't because it looks kind of geeky when you're giving a professional presentation. But if I was by myself right now, I would be wearing them. So throughout the day, whenever possible, use natural light instead of LEDs. LEDs are a disaster. So LEDs have just a very, very narrow band of blue light, and they do not have life-giving red and infrared frequencies. If you want to improve your indoor lighting, there is like literally one company in the world that sells a combination of an LED because it has to have an LED to be allowed to be sold. There's now regulations in every country, but it includes a full spectrum tungsten filament with the LED that adds these visible and invisible frequencies that are so supportive of our cellular function. And then you want to wear these very attractive glasses after sunset to prevent your brain from thinking that it's daytime, because then it will get ready for daytime. So that's sun, and I'm just going to go through two of these. There's more, but the second most important message that we give our brain about what time of day or night it is with food. So light is number one, food is number two. Our bodies have evolved to expect to eat during the day. I don't know why, it just did. That's probably easier to find food during the day. That's kind of how our bodies developed. And the body prepares for this and functions best if we keep to this schedule. That's when the organs think they're going to be asked to do some work. And not only us, but the bugs that live in us uh, have their own little clocks, and they expect to get fed during the day. If we eat too late in the day, which many of us do, myself included, the food digests and moves more slowly because the whole gastrointestinal tract isn't ready for it, and it just doesn't function as well. Someone asked me today in another course about acid reflux, and we're more likely to get acid and heartburn if we eat later in the day. We're more likely, so if you eat the exact same food in the morning and do it again at night, maybe on a different day, and you compare the rise in blood sugar after that identical meal, the blood sugar is going to go up more if you eat it at night. That's been replicated many times. There's more leaky gut because night is when our gut repairs itself. It needs to be resting in order to do that. And if we're eating around the clock, it doesn't get to rest, and we're more likely to have leaky gut, and that leads to generalized inflammation. And our microbiome gets less healthy because it actually also needs a rest. I think I've kind of said this, so this is just with a photo. So I'll move on. Oh, and the magic number I have here is 6 hours, but really the magic number, no, the magic number is 12 hours. So the work of Dr. Sachin Panda, pretty crystal clear. You need to fast for 12 hours overnight to have a healthy circadian rhythm. So that's the circadian part. Now I'm moving more into the sleep quality. So the four aspects of improving the behavioral things you can do to improve your sleep quality: reverse unconscious conditioning. I'm going to explain each of these in more depth. Number two, restrict time in bed to get better quality sleep rather than necessarily better quantity or more quantity. Calm the mind and the body. I'm sure you've got amazing strategies for that. And examine your sleep-related worries to see if that's making you more worked up and kind of getting in the way of falling asleep. So what happens when we're in bed, not asleep, is because of neuroplasticity, our brain goes, oh, I get it. Bed is a place we go to toss and turn, think, worry, plan for the day, watch TV, check our phone, eat, whatever, fill in the blank. And it hardwires that. And now every time you get into bed, no matter how sleepy you might have been at the time, your brain will wake up because it says, oh, this is the time that we usually do X. So this isn't your fault. It's just how the brain works. And you can't prevent it from doing it, right? If you do A and B at the same time, the brain figures that they're related and wires them together. So to prevent that from happening, and if it has happened, how to retrain your brain. Go to bed only when sleepy. I had a cat for many years. She was my mentor in this regard because she could fall asleep anywhere, anytime. This is the really tough part. Get out of bed if you're not sleeping. Now, this is brutal and hard, and nobody wants to do it, but there is research to support this because now you're teaching your brain that if you're tossing and turning and thinking and worrying and checking your phone and eating, etc., you're not doing it in bed. And use your bed only for sleep, and most people say and sex, but not for any other activity. So that's number one strategy. Number two strategy, so that's for people who are in bed tossing and turning. This strategy, sleep restriction, is for people who have multiple wakenings in the night. Multiple wakenings means that your adenosine level isn't quite high enough and you're waking up easily. You're a light sleeper. And the goal is to increase your sleep efficiency. So if you're in bed for 9 hours, but you're only asleep for 5 of those hours, that means your brain is constantly wiring being in bed and being awake. So the goal is to get this number to 85%. If you're only sleeping for 5 hours, the recommended strategy is to restrict your time in bed to 5 hours plus 30 minutes so that your brain gets retrained that bed is for sleep. Now, at first, this is going to make you miserable because you're going to get into bed, you're going to set your alarm for 5.5 hours later. And by the way, that's the shortest time you should ever do this. So even if you sleep 2 hours, you still get to set your alarm for 5.5 hours. You set your alarm, and now it takes you 3 hours to fall asleep. That means you only get 2.5 hours of sleep, and you're going to be exhausted. What does that mean? That means your adenosine level, this sleepiness molecule, is going to be sky high the next day. You're going to white knuckle it through the entire day, cursing that you ever attended this lecture. And the next night, you're going to fall asleep much more easily because your adenosine level is going to be so high. Most people find that sleep restriction makes significant changes for them within 1 to 2 weeks. Caution. If you're a hypersomniac, meaning you sleep more than 9 hours, do not do this. You don't need to. You're already sleeping, right? This is for people who are waking up multiple times and who are getting insufficient sleep. Or if your sleep efficiency is already 85%, don't do this. You don't need it. So again, try to choose the strategy that's a good fit for the problem that you're having. Calm the mind and the body. I'm sure you've covered many of these strategies, so I'll be really brief. So constructive worry in the day so that you don't go into bed and start replaying your day and planning your to-do list for tomorrow. Do something pleasurable and relaxing, and I'm going to say probably not too engaging, right? You don't want to engage in some really fascinating murder mystery. your friends, your friend's difficult life situation with a 2-hour phone call right before bed. You want to do something that's a little bit boring, and you want to wear your blue blocker glasses. So they've done a study around camping. When people go camping and they don't have exposure to that light because they're sitting outside around the campfire, they get tired or sleepy very early. And I can tell you, because I'm at a campground right now, the music is already off because people are already winding down because it's dark out. Try something like mindfulness meditation. I'm sure you guys have that way, are on top of that. And progressive muscle relaxation, paced breathing. So these are all evidence-based strategies that activate the vagus nerve and calm the nervous system. And if your fight or flight is turned on, you won't be able to sleep. It overrides the adenosine, the sleepiness molecule. So you have to get those in balance. Just another couple tools is the 4-7-8 breathing by Dr. Andrew Weil and heart math. I don't know, Madeline, if you've covered some of these.
Not really in
Nope.
this course, but
Oh,
those
okay.
are, yeah, certainly things I have taught a lot, particularly the Dr. Andrew Weil sleep counting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also like, box breathing and
Yeah.
visualization, those apps that you can also get.
Yeah, there's so many
You know,
now. The
yeah.
sky's the
Hmm.
limit, right? You've got millions of choices. So it's
Hmm.
basically something that makes you feel calm and happy and slows your out breath to activate the vagus nerve. That's really the key to the breathing. Oh, and then there's Qigong. And then there's the sleep myths. So some of the myths that can be problematic are things like what I've just told you. I've just reinforced the myth by saying ideally you would get 8 hours of sleep. So we don't need 8 hours. 8 hours is some kind of magical average, but you need enough to feel refreshed, is basically it. But if you don't get that on a couple of occasions, it won't hurt you. It's when it's chronic day after day, month after month, year after year. If I wake in the night, it will have a negative effect. It might not. These things are not so cut and dry. So one of the strategies to a better sleep is to say, oh, well, I'm going to do the best I can. Sometimes when I'm lying down to sleep, I think to myself, I'm practicing relaxing right now, right? I don't even think about, oh, I need to fall asleep because it's already such and such a time. So I play some mind games with myself to say, I'm practicing being, I'm practicing relaxing, I'm doing mindful meditation, I'm counting breaths, whatever the strategy is that appeals. This is a really important one. If I spend more time in bed, even if I'm not sleeping, I will feel better the next day. So unfortunately, this backfires because if you're spending time in bed not sleeping, your brain is wiring that not sleeping is a great thing to do when you're in bed. And this is a big one of people I work with. I can't do anything about insomnia because it's caused by a chemical imbalance. I would say, yes, the chemicals might be out of whack, like your cortisol and your adrenaline, but they're all things we can do something about. So that's kind of the core of the presentation. Just looking at our time here, 42 minutes. We've got 18 minutes or so left. Are there any of these? I know, Madeline, you said a few questions had come in from people that weren't able to make it tonight. I don't
Hmm.
know if you want to go to those first, and then we can go through some of
Sure.
these if they're of interest, or the people who are here can ask some questions.
Yeah, well, I'll just say that I think you answered actually most of them because there was
Okay.
one about a sleep light, waking up through the night.
Okay.
The one I guess I could ask is I do sleep well, 10 till 6, but often feel sleepy in the afternoon. I would love to have,
Hmm.
I would love to feel energy all day. Should I nap or should I keep going?
So I do have this question right. Is napping okay?
Oh, there
So
we go.
I'm gonna
Okay. Yeah.
slip ahead
Yeah.
to that one.
Okay.
So the research shows, believe it or not, because I grew up in my field, napping is bad and you should white knuckle it and never nap because it's gonna your adenosine is gonna go down and then you're gonna get a less good sleep at night. For some people, that's true. For some people, that isn't. So, one of my take home messages is we're all individuals and you have to probably answer some of these questions for yourself. But the research shows that short naps, 20 to 60 minutes, greater than 8 hours before you plan to go to sleep. So, that's why I put 3 p.m. for people that might go to bed around 11, can be helpful and actually helps consolidate learning. So, whatever you've just been learning, if afterwards you have a nap or something called non-sleep deep rest, so things like self-hypnosis, yoga nidra, meditation, it actually helps you remember what you learned better. So, that's a
Mhm.
positive. If you try the nap, like I would say, experiment. If you try the nap, and it interferes with your nighttime sleep, that would be a definite clue that that's probably not a good idea for you. Some
Right. That
days
makes sense.
I'm just that sleepy. I take like a 40-minute power nap and it doesn't interfere with my sleep. Now, one of the
Mhm.
tricks I've learned is I don't nap in bed.
Hmm.
Because if I nap in bed,
Okay.
I'm probably going to nap for a long time because it's so comfortable.
Right.
So believe it or not, I do a very bizarre thing, but several of my, people I work with try it and we all really like it. So you lie on the floor at a chair. So you have this is your butt and your legs are up and they're resting on the chair. So you're kind of at 90-90. So we call
Ah,
it
okay.
legs up. What
Yeah.
happens when you get into that? Of course, it has to be comfortable enough. You can use a small pillow if you want under your head. It's better if you're on a carpet or something that's a little bit padded. What happens when you lie with your feet above your heart is the blood returns from your feet to your heart, and the heart has enough blood, so the heart slows down. It activates the vagus nerve. So there's all
Right.
these strategies to activate the vagus nerve. And I find if I'm truly sleepy, so there's a difference between tired and sleepy. If I'm tired, I do not nap because I'm not sleepy. I'm not actually going to fall asleep. I'm just going to lie there frustrated. But if I'm actually
Mm.
sleepy, like I'm having a hard time keeping my eyes open, I nap on the floor in that position. And it's just uncomfortable enough that I almost always wake up after about 40 minutes, which is like the perfect napping time according to the research.
Interesting. It's that yoga pose, legs up the wall.
Yeah.
It
But
actually
I
does
do it
work.
with
Yeah.
bent. I
Interesting.
think the yoga pose
Uh-huh.
has
Yeah.
straight legs, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
This is bent
Yeah.
legs. But I
A little
mean,
more
you can do it
comfy.
with
Yeah.
straight as well. It's just more comfy because then they're supported on a chair.
Right. Well, that's helpful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, if anybody here has any questions that are coming up, or maybe there's one of these that is
Hmm.
twigging for you, please, feel free to either unmute or pop something in the chat, or if there's something that you've been that you want to know more about. Um, the one thing that just stood out for me though is just what you're saying about circadian rhythms. And the more I'm reading, the more it
Mm,
sounds like it's like the hidden thing that we haven't been talking about
yeah.
that is the key to so many health conditions. My question is, I've heard at this time of the year, which is perfect, we're doing this around equinox,
Yeah.
that this 6 weeks of getting out in the morning with the sunrise actually sets your biological clocks for the next 6 months.
Huh.
I don't know if
I
that's
don't know, but that would be nice because the equinoxes are when it's the easiest to be up with the sun and to watch
Mm,
the sunset, right? Because the days are approximately 12 hours. So it's quite
right.
easy to do. In the middle of winter, it's a little bit harder. Like I grew up in Edmonton, the day's only like 5 hours long. And to watch the sunset, it's already like 10 a.m. or something. It's a bit awkward if have a job or something like that. And in
Yeah.
midsummer, again, if you live in the north, the sun may never set or it only sets for a few hours. So I
Yeah.
think you might be right that the equinoxes, like I'm taking advantage right now. I have my
Mm,
alarm on my phone set for 6:15.
hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just what
And
I,
that
it's just
gives,
so
and
powerful that, yeah, that we have these little clocks in all of our genes that are getting set by the sun.
yeah,
Yeah. Anyway, Kasha asks if you don't have blue light glasses, can you just change the computer or phone screen to the orange light at sunset or put it on dark mode?
absolutely. So that's a great tool. I have Flux on my laptop that I'm using right now, and I have Iris on my phone. They're both really good. They make it very red. The problem is, so for me right now, you can see the light shining off my head. Um, LED lights are a narrow band blue light. So the regulation in most countries in the world is that light manufacturers are no longer allowed to have broad spectrum. Even if it says broad spectrum, it isn't.
Mm,
And important wavelengths of red and infrared are no longer available to us. So if we're indoors and we have regular lights on, we're getting intense blue light shining at us, even if we've turned our devices to be less harmful.
mm, hmm. Okay. So with
And there's,
those, are
and
those
I was just going to
apps?
say, there's all kind of nuances to that. So Uh, a lot of people wear yellow glasses during the day if they're working at a lot of screens for many hours, like as part of their job. It's more restful for the eyes because, again, you're not getting, like in the sun, you're not getting intense blue light all the time shining into your eyes. That never happens. You're always getting
Mhm,
a broad spectrum. So they've actually found, I just heard, his name is Glenn Jeffrey. He's a researcher in London, England, and he just found that when you shine red light on your body, the mitochondria speed up and are more active and productive. And if you shine blue light on your body, they slow right down and are underactive. So it's so biological and physical that we really need, like light is just so crucial. I'm like almost a missionary now
yeah.
because I've just, listened to 100 podcasts and read
Hmm.
a ton of papers that this is like we evolved as biological beings and we're living in this artificial environment.
Hmm. Hmm. It's so, so important from, yeah, what I'm hearing now. And
Mm.
so, okay, this is maybe a silly question, but when you're talking about red light, what is infrared? Or is that
So,
something complete? That's heat, the more than light, or
yeah, so we have this wavelength, right? If you shine light through a prism, you get the whole rainbow of colors
hmm.
from violet to blue to green to yellow to orange to red. That's called visible light. We no
Hmm.
longer have that in our indoor environment because, again, we're only allowed to have blue now. Below a shorter wavelength than the violet is ultraviolet. Above the wave, which we cannot see, but we know it's there because we get a suntan or sunburn, right?
Right.
Above the wavelength, so a longer wavelength than red is something called infrared. So red, visible light is from about the low 400s to about 700 nanometers. I'm sure I'm slightly off there, but 400 to 700 are the wavelengths of the light we can see. The ultraviolet
Hmm.
is shorter. It's from like 200 and something to 400. and infrared
Right.
is longer than 700 and it goes way up to like 2000.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And so we can't see it. And
Hmm.
yes, heat does contain infrared energy and vice versa.
Yes.
And
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
why it's been banned from light bulbs because of global warming. The
Oh,
governments
okay.
don't want to have our indoor environments overheated because then we're going to use more air conditioning and that's going to worsen global warming. The problem is they had no idea, right? We do these things as humans and they have these
Mm,
unintended consequences. There are
mhm,
people who believe that the explosion of chronic disease, pain, fatigue, diabetes, dementia, heart disease, cancer, those are the big ones, is mostly due to these changes in our light environment,
mm, mm,
even more so
mhm,
than diet, some people are arguing.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of hearing as well. Just it's the research is just is fascinating
Yeah.
around that. So important. Yeah. So I'm wondering if there's any of these that are, I mean, often people will ask about melatonin. I know,
Mhm.
bedtime, and I take two magnesium every night, no matter what. I just do. I just feel like it's good for me, and I was told once it's good for me. Do you want to just, yeah, do you want to
Yeah, I
touch
can talk
on
about those,
some of
sure.
the like magnesium and things that people take? Yeah.
So I just did a search. I just tried to update this information and make sure it was very current. Um, the word is may, right? That's the one I put in bold. So increased magnesium in the diet. So here's an important feature, and I might even do an upcoming blog on this. Just because more of something is associated with something else doesn't mean taking it as a supplement is going to have the same effect. So, for example, we know that people who have more vitamin D in their bodies have less death by all causes. They get less cancer, less heart disease, et cetera, et cetera. So, for the last 20 years since I've been in medicine, we were told take vitamin D supplements because it's going to get you up to this level that's been shown in the research to be associated with these good outcomes. Late 2022, a publication in the New England Journal of Medicine, so very prestigious, massive study, showed that it makes no difference.
Oh, interesting.
Probably the take home is that if you have high vitamin D, it means you've been out in the sun.
Right,
And if you
right,
take a
right.
pill, it's
Yeah,
not the same. So with
right.
magnesium,
So,
there's some debate, for example, with calcium and bone disease. If you take calcium as part of your diet, it looks like it can be helpful. But if you take it as a supplement, not so helpful. I was not able to find whether that's true for magnesium. So the review article I found said increase magnesium as part of diet and maybe supplementation may improve sleep quality and sleep regulation. The evidence is inconclusive. I'll just
okay.
say from my personal experience, probably my favorite is magnesium glycinate. Nothing
Hmm.
works for everybody and we're all different, right? So you might try magnesium. If you try it for a couple weeks and it does nothing, move on, right? You don't have to
Yeah,
kind of keep trying. Maybe I
yeah,
didn't do it right.
yeah.
Maybe I didn't take
Persevere.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, no need to do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I would say if you think there's a signal there that it may be helpful, work up to about 500 milligrams because that's the dose that the studies that found it was helpful used. And
Okay.
500 is a sizable dose. Like it's not a massive
Mm,
dose, but it's a significant dose. Most
hmm.
most capsules are 1 or 200. So that means taking a bit of a handful of them at bedtime. And again, I would say try for a month and assess. And if it's not working, save your money, try something
Yeah.
else.
Try something else. Yeah,
And then
yeah.
melatonin. So when I wrote a manual 12 years ago all about self-management, right, for people with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And in that, I said, melatonin is really helpful to help set your circadian rhythm, your body clock, but it's not helpful for insomnia. I rewrote it, my manual. I'm just updating and, well, basically writing a new one. And when I did the chapter on sleep, I reviewed the literature. It's changed. So now the
Mm,
literature is saying actually melatonin at a dose of 1 to 2 milligrams, so not the big massive 5 to 10 milligram doses, shortens the length of time it takes to get to sleep. So that is quite helpful for many people. I would
mm,
say probably it's relatively safe, although there's always the question of whether you take a hormone, because melatonin is a hormone, as a supplement, it's going to give your brain the message that it doesn't need to make its own. This is always a
mhm,
bit of a worry with hormones. Probably night owls are the people that benefit the most, especially when they take it 2 to 3 hours before bed. So not at bedtime, that does nothing. 2 to 3 hours before bed and in conjunction with bright light in the morning. So those two things to set, and obviously I would say the bright light, outside light is better. But we live in Canada. If it's minus 40 out and you just want to use your satellite, go like anything is better than nothing, right?
mhm.
So the two combinations of the bright light in the morning and the melatonin 2 to 3 hours before bed seems to have some pretty good evidence to support it. Melatonin is also very well shown to be helpful for shift workers and people changing time zones to help you reset your clock.
Okay.
And helpful hint, you get way more melatonin from being in the sun than from a supplement.
Right.
Hate to
I'm
belabor
thinking
it,
about
but it's just coming out everywhere. So save your money because the sun is free.
I'm just thinking about how much my teenagers would have benefited from, if only they would listen to, you just got to get up in the morning and get outside as opposed and not stay up all night on
I, I,
studying.
yeah, like I've been ill with chronic fatigue syndrome, ME/FM, for 37
Hmm.
years. I did not see a single sunset for that entire time. Because
Hmm.
I like
Hmm.
getting up anything before 10 a.m. was a non-starter for me. So this is a
Right.
dramatic change in my
Yeah.
lifestyle, but that's how impactful this, reading and listening to this research has been. I thought, you know what? If I
Yeah.
really want to be healthy, I have to pay
Hmm.
attention to my natural environment.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. In so many ways. Yeah. So just maybe one last question from
Mhm.
Teresa, if that's okay.
Sure.
Um, I'm also interested in magnesium. There's so many different types.
Yeah.
Yes, there are. What time of day and what time of day should you take it?
So there are so many types and there's so many uses of magnesium. I have it's my number one blog, believe it or not, on my website, totally free, is on magnesium. So you could just go to my website, eleanorsteinmd.ca, click on free resources, and I believe the very first one, it says helpful blogs, and then just type in magnesium. So what I say in there is the type that you want to take depends on the purpose. So if you're using it for bedtime, I would take magnesium glycinate because the magnesium is relaxing and the glycine is relaxing. So you're getting a two for
Mm-hmm.
one. I would take it, you might even take two doses. You might take one after dinner, 1 or 200 milligrams, and then another, 2 to 300 milligrams at bedtime to get up to that 500. I would say maybe 30 to 60 minutes before bedtime. Again, it depends a little bit on your own metabolism, right? Some people
Right.
metabolize and absorb things more quickly than others. Um, if your goal is to increase energy, Magnesium doesn't really increase energy, but it's part of what the mitochondria need to function. So I would still go with magnesium glycinate. If you're using it for fibromyalgia, magnesium malate is recommended because it impacts the citric acid cycle, which helps the mitochondria work better. If you're using it for constipation, I would use magnesium citrate because that is poorly absorbed. It will stay in the bowel, it will draw water in and help you have more regular bowel movements.
Mm.
And what was the
Mm.
last one? If you're using it for leg cramps, so just saying the research on that is a little bit dodgy. I still take it, even though I'm not 100% convinced it works. Um, and I just use my magnesium glycinate for that.
Okay. For restless leg or and cramps,
For
I
leg
think.
cramps. I'm
Leg
not
cramps.
sure it
Okay.
works
Yeah.
for
Mm.
restless legs. That's a bit of a
Mm.
different problem. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just realizing I haven't had restless legs for so long now. And I never thought
Fabulous.
about that, but I take the glycinate, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. So
Interesting.
Teresa's just
And
asking
yeah,
when to take melatonin. So again, that's 2 to
melatonin.
3 hours before you want to be asleep, right? So melatonin is a hormone of darkness. Our body starts producing it. Well, it produces it all day, it turns out. So we can build up a store if we're out in the sun. And then when the sun goes down, that's when the brain starts producing it. And so we want to mimic that by taking it 2 to 3 hours before we're hoping to be asleep. You're
Right.
welcome.
Great. Well, thank you, Ellie. Thank you for being here. Thank you for just, yeah, kind of bringing it all together. That's what I so appreciate about you. Like, and we
Thank
know
you.
that this is, that you're always researching and finding things out. And and really it's so timely and it's so important, the stuff that you're talking about for all of us, for our
Yeah.
health, for well-being, for our mental health, for everything. So thanks so much, and thanks for being here, ladies.
Yeah.
And the this is being recorded, and it'll be up in the course portal tomorrow if you need to go back over the information. And I did put the link, and I'll send it out the link to everybody of
Great.
how to opt in and download those 10 best tips for restorative sleep on Ellie's website. All
Yeah.
right.
Good luck, everyone. I hope your lionesses are awakened and
Yes,
you
we
create
are
these
waking up.
awesome, powerful lives.
That's it.
That's it.
That's the goal. But then we
Okay.
need to sleep too.
Right. You need to sleep to be
Yeah.
able to be awake during the day.
Yeah. 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 Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
And okay, we'll be in touch, Ellie.